I'm stealing Kevin's torch, and I'm going to show you why. In my garden right now, I have a few common garden pests that I'm going to share with you so you can learn to identify them and how to control these pests. Right here with our tomato bush, this is one of the most common things that happens with tomatoes is we get the tomato hornworm. And it can happen anytime in the summer and in the fall. You'll start to notice that when you start to see some defoliation on your tomato plant itself. You'll see the leaves start to disappear, you'll see flowers start to disappear, and you'll even start to see the tomatoes being munched on. Evening time is the best time to come out and hunt for tomato hornworms. They're usually at the top because it's a little bit cooler and they're easier to spot that way. And I just noticed right here, here's a little tomato hornworm right here. So this is just a baby. They can get pretty big. They're, 3 inches sometimes. And when they get that size, they can devour a tomato plant almost overnight. So you definitely want to get rid of these guys. So hunt for the tomato worms and remove them manually. And if you just can't get to them or you can't find them all, then you can reach for some Spinosad or some BT. These are natural choices and you can just spray on your plant. Always spray these in the evening time so that you don't hurt bees or any of the other beneficial insects. These make great chicken and duck snacks. Tomato hornworms will feed on other vegetable plants as well, so sometimes you'll find them on your potatoes and your pepper plants. And the problem is they'll create disease too, so they can carry it from one plant to another. My grandkids absolutely love going and hunting for tomato hornworms. They actually like to handle them and pet them. They think they're a pet, but I get a little squeamish with them, and so I have to pick them off either by pulling the horn or I'll actually take a branch off, just so that I don't have to touch these wiggly guys. Spider mites have been a real problem for us the last couple of years. We've been in a drought, we don't have much humidity, and so they thrive in this kind of a condition. So what they do is they suck the juice out of the cells on the back side of the leaves. And as you can see here, that makes them turn yellow, they get spotted. Sometimes you have webbing and sometimes you don't on the back side of these leaves. So you really got to pay attention and watch this right away before it gets out of hand. You can also sometimes see little black dots on the back side of the leaves, and sometimes they'll be white if they have died. So the best way to control this is with moisture because they don't like that moisture. So just giving things a rinse or a spray off on a day-to-day basis, better in the morning, and that really takes down the population of the spider mites. As we speak, I feel very blessed. We talked about having a drought, and right now we're getting sprinkled on, and this is so wonderful. So there again, that's going to help with our spider mite issue. So another issue that we have that gets really bad during the summer, and no matter what I do, every year it gets me, is the 3-striped potato beetle. It attacks what you would think is potatoes, but it gets our tomatillos. And when it lays its eggs, its larvae looks like kind of like a little bit of a slug there. And they usually group together and they defoliate the plants, as you can see right here. The only way that I've ever been able to really get a handle on these guys is spray Spinosad on it, and it seems to eradicate them overnight. So that's one of those things that if you don't take care of, you're not going to end up with any fruit. To me, one of the most annoying garden pests is slugs and snails. There's a slug right here, and I can't stand to touch them. I can't stand the way they look. They bother me more than any garden pest that's out there. And the best way that I've found that controls them is our ducks. We run ducks on the outside of our garden, but unfortunately in the garden, I can't have the ducks trampling down the garden because they'll cause just as much damage. And so I usually just reach for Sluggo, and it's just an iron phosphate, and when it breaks down it turns into a fertilizer. It's safe for humans and it's safe for pets. And so it works really good just to sprinkle it around the base of plants. Otherwise you end up with things like this here. And they'll take those little seedlings and just mow them off overnight. Before you even realize that they were coming up, they're gone. And so controlling these guys is hugely important. They love moist environments, so a garden is the perfect place for them. And they like to lay their eggs under rocks or in crevices. So they're just like little white balls, they're eggs. Both slugs and snails have the same type of an egg. But these things, to me, are one of the most disgusting garden pests we've got. Well, slugs and snails are probably my most loathed pest in the garden. I would have to say that squash bugs are the hardest to get rid of, at least in our area, and they multiply like crazy. But the thing is if you have good soil, your pest pressure becomes less and less over the years as you increase the microbial life in your soil. Your plants are healthier, and you just don't have as many squash bugs. Squash bugs have a distinctive smell. It's their mechanism to defend themselves. And usually when you're walking through the garden, you can actually smell them from a distance and you know you've got squash bugs. They're very hard on your plants. They suck the life out of it, and you'll start to see a little bit of browning around the edges, yellowing, and even they'll kill your squash plants if you end up having too many of them. They will carry disease from plant to plant, and I'm telling you, these guys are resilient, and it's really hard to get them killed with any kind of a product to spray on them. However, when they're babies, you can use a neem oil, and that works pretty good when they're in their nymph stage. But as an adult, I kid you not, they are resilient. So, kidding aside, this torch that I was joking about in the beginning, we actually use this for our pest control. So as crazy as it seems, if you got a lot of squash bugs, this is a good way to get through them very, very quickly. You just take it over the top of the plant. I usually like to wet the plant first. It brings them to the surface. It makes it easier to get. And then you're moving it very quickly over the top of the squash bug, just enough to where it doesn't burn the plant, but it gets the squash bug. We are talking flame, we are talking fire, so be careful and make sure you don't have a lot of dry debris around there. Just use common sense. Squash bugs will generally lay their eggs on the bottom of the leaves. That doesn't mean that they won't lay them on the tops and sometimes on other things nearing where your squash plants are at. But typically, they're going to lay them in patterns like this. They'll be coppery color, kind of an orangey color, blacks, browns. So they're usually in a pattern like this. So search for these. You can actually just tear part of the leaf off, or if you felt a little like being a pyro, I guess, go ahead and singe those eggs. Just do it just until they crackle. But remember, that one part of the leaf will definitely die. This year, I've really only had a handful of squash bugs, and so it's been really easy just to hand pick them off, and so that's a really good option if you just don't have a problem with squash bugs. These pests are extremely destructive in the garden, so be vigilant in your pest management. Till next time, we'll see ya.